to be honest, it's a collection of all of them. And obviously there's a hierarchy, but you need the buy-in from everybody.
Right.
Ultimately, the president will call it. The president of the label will call whether the deal gets a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
So I'd love to talk about that a little bit more when you're talking about, just talking about big deals, right? Yeah. So, and whether it's a big deal, a small deal, somebody, an artist that you believe is a superstar but is not there yet as an A&R, who are you speaking to at the label side? And I'd love to just go into the label infrastructure because you have great visibility of that for so long. But are you talking to somebody at BA? Are you also talking to one of the data nerds? Or are you talking to figure out?
To be honest, it's a collection of all of them. And obviously there's a hierarchy, but you need the buy-in from everybody.
Right.
Ultimately, the president will call it. The president of the label will call whether the deal gets a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Some majors have...
Based on what though?
Based on the compelling story and proposition you sell to the president.
Okay, so, with the data and all.
Which is data. So not just data though, it's like, what would happen is we'd have an artist who's, all the labels are going to see this artist. Actually, you go to a show in Shoreditch in the UK, you turn up, you look to your left, you've got Richard Donovan from Polydor, the legendary A&R guy. You look to the right, you've got Jamie Spinks from Columbia in the UK. You'll have a Brian Turner from Atlantic. You have all these like big characters in the room. You're like, okay, this is hot. You know it's hot because you trust their taste. They've all had multiple hits with other artists. So they're all sort of on the trail of something hot. So we go down to the show, we see the artist, we go, okay, we think that person's a star. We bring that artist into the label to meet our team. And our marketing person would have done a bit of research. I'll have a data analyst look at their socials, look at the sort of records they put out already independently, if they have. And we'd create a picture of what they've done today and how we'd sort of roadmap it to global success.
All right, everybody, we're gonna take a little break. Because if you're listening and thinking, fuck, I could really use some guidance right now, and you're serious about building your career in the music industry, I'm now offering private strategy sessions. These are fully personalized, just you and me tackling whatever you need in your career. With over 16 years of experience working with artists, managers, and brands, I can help you map out your next moves. Now, whether that's structuring your team, scaling your brand, navigating the industry, even figuring out what steps to take, whether to go to a distributor or to a record label and figuring out what are the best deal points. I can help you with your career with where you're at. You can now book a one-on-one with me through my Calendly, and you can find the link in the description. Now let's get back to the pod.
Within a year or two period sort of thing. So we'd have that together. And before we'd even offer anything internally, I would do a senior meeting with the president. We'd have the head of business affairs in there, and we'd have someone from finance. And pre to that meeting, we'd have done a P&L, which was basically saying if we pay £100,000, we expect to be in profit by song 12 in a year and a half later, based on us releasing every 3 months and then sort of growing. And we project literally the whole sort of story of how we'd have success. And then we'd sort of look at the terms we're offering with the business affairs person, and we'd be in a room, and then the president and the head of A&R would be talking about how we're going to break the artist and do we feel good about it? Have we got the team of people within the label, i.e. marketing, social media, DSP pitches that can actually deliver this sort of project? And if the answer is yes to all those, then we'd send an offer out.
Got you.
And that would happen pre to something going out. So we'd like to think that anytime we'd offered on anything, we've got a plan. We sort of understand how we're going to break the person, even if our numbers are off, or our sort of, sometimes as an A&R man, you've got to inflate things. You've got to creatively navigate the proposition to get the deal done, because A&Rs generally are on 3-year deals.
Okay.
Generally, which is another sort of part of what we do, which is quite hard with the A&Rs. So sometimes you do a 3-year contract if you're a senior A&R person normally in the UK. I don't know what it's like in the US. And if you're a year and a half in and you've had nothing going on, and there's a hot deal coming up, and you know you're about to renegotiate a year out, and sometimes you create a scenario where signing that artist is a compelling sort of win for your label.
Got you.
So and if you get a deal done across the line, you're able to sort of renegotiate your deal because you want to see the artist through. Yeah. And extend your own deal, which is sort of makes it sound a little bit selfish, but it's because of how the employment works within record labels. I think sometimes that's just how it works.
I feel like that's just the reality, right?
Yeah.
It's just a microcosm of just how the things kind of work at a major record label.
Yeah, everyone's motivated by survival and success.
Yeah.
So I think everyone wants to feel important. Everyone wants to feel like they're making a difference on things. And A&Rs are normally the first people to get fired if anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. The A&R turnover at majors is pretty high.
It's pretty big.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's pretty big because they genuinely brunt the risk. And what you don't see behind that is sort of whenever they're doing those deals, you've got a finance guy who's sort of onto you, and you've got a finance guy who's onto you, and the head of business affairs who's all over you.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got to try and navigate these characters. This is what I say about being a good A&R guy. You've got to have taste. You've got to have the ability to weather tricky characters within a corporate situation and still stay focused on breaking the ice. And when you've got really strong characters in departments that are at a record label, even though they're not really involved in the creative side of it, everyone tells their family they're working with, I don't know, Taylor Swift or whoever sort of thing. So they all want to feel a sense of importance. So navigating that can be tricky as an A&R person. That's part of your job.
How do you go about doing that because especially you're talking about people who aren't creators or more on the corporate side of things? What does Rich do in this situation?
What I do is I'm sort of like, because I was a manager first, I worked at a few different labels. I have the benefit of seeing these characters in different forms at different places and knowing what something means. So I'm able to sort of confidently push back on things and present a good reason why based on my experience. I sort of, what I like to do with my teams, I sort of like to talk them through that process with my young A&R guys and sort of bring them into the rooms while we're having those conversations, so they're able to sort of have the tools to navigate these characters who would always sort of throw hurdles at stuff.
You've actually bring up a good point and something that I wanted to talk about, because you've been tapped by a lot of major label presidents through your tenure when you're in the label system to build these young A&R teams. Why do you think that is, and what are you looking for in a young A&R?
I think the reason why I sort of people come to me for it, because I enjoy the process of development. I take really a lot of enjoyment, sorry to repeat myself, in that process. And I think if I find a young A&R man who has a bit of character, who's confident, who's not fully there yet, but just needs a bit of encouragement or support or navigating, I take a lot of joy in doing that. So I think wherever I've gone, I've managed to sort of develop one or two young executives that have gone on to do something really cool. And I think I see that as I've always seen that as part of my job. It's something I enjoy doing, mentoring younger A&R people that are trying to get into the business and sort of protecting them from the sort of warfare of the corporate side of it while they're developing themselves. And I really enjoyed that process. So
yeah,
I think that's art in itself.
Totally.
In doing that, and just being able to sort of allow them to sort of sign stuff that they probably wouldn't have done had I not been there, for me is a win. It's a massive win for me.
Do you have an example of one of those?
Yeah, I think we got like this kid. We've got this amazing kid at EMI who's now at Capital now in the UK called Jacob Porritt, who signed. He was basically he had an artist called Sammy Virgie. I don't know if you heard of him. There's a really amazing UK garage artist called Sammy Virgie. He's got a record out with Skepta at the moment. But Jacob was like following this guy around for months, and we do a deals meeting every week. And I remember sort of being like 6 months in and like, mate, are you going to do this or not? If you're not going to do it, then we need to sort of move on to something else. Go and find something else. And he was so relentlessly coming back every week and fighting me on it in terms of I was rushing him, and he just took his time, built a relationship with the artist. And even though I was getting squeezed from my boss about the deals that were going out, because we put a deal out on this kid and he was not coming back to us. He was just like, we had a real back and forth. And I was able to protect him from the head of business affairs who was onto him and wanted to sort of take the deal back. And he signed the artist, and since then the artist has gone on. You'll check him out. Like I think he's the hottest garage sort of electronic DJ coming out of the UK, next to Fred again.
Crazy. Yeah. So Jacob put the deal in front of the artist, but the artist didn't sign the deal until X amount of months later.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was back and forth. We were back and forth for about 6 months, probably more than that, because the artist was already touring, already doing shows. There's no rush at all, because what you find a lot more now is there was a time where you put a record deal in front of somebody and they're like, oh, my life's going to change. Let me go and sign this thing. And now it's like, actually, the managers are a lot smarter.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more room for them to have a business and tour and do gigs before doing a deal.
Right.
And not be sort of so quick to make a decision on something. So they wanted to make sure that they were signed to the right people because they were fiercely independent before that. And the manager, Jasmine, and Jacob, the A&R guy, between them just figured it out, took their time and navigated it so well that it's gone on to sort of do really well. And he's still there now and he's smashing it. Sam Virgil, I think, will be the biggest electronic act this year coming out of the UK.
And now that he did that deal, he's able to go and do, people are going to leave him alone.
No, he's certified. So he's got the stamp. Now he's got the stamp. He's done that. He signed another kid called, I think, Kilimanjaro out of Scotland. He's like I'd say like a black sort of Calvin Harris type kid who's just like incredible electronic artist as well. So he's gone on and done stuff like that. So one leads to the other, leads to the other. It's like whenever I've had hits, it's led to something else and something else sort of thing. But you start to see the character traits of someone who's good at dealing with people that are telling them no.
Yeah.
And then keep pushing through, which is what Jacob did, which I'm really proud of being a part of his sort of journey.
Yeah, that's amazing because to hear that there's still incredible A&Rs, young A&Rs that are coming through the label system, you don't really hear about these wins too much, right? Everybody always kind of looking at the big guy.
Look at the big boss, but I always think like in order to sort of do well for an extended period of time, you've got to look to younger culture. And these young kids that are really living it every day are really, really important. These young A&R guys are going to discover the next, like in 2 years' time, there's going to be a big Grammy Awards, and those characters that are winning are right now on their grind doing something.
Right.
They're in the studio. These young guys that are sort of like spending weekends in the studio with their friends, trying to sort of figure out how to get the best songs out of their artists. It's all happening in real time now. So for me, like the real win is finding these characters with these sort of relentless, positive, creative traits and invested in them and developing them as early as possible.
Do you find that these great A&Rs with good taste are coming up against those folks who are in the back room looking at the data and who's the more important?
There's like a warfare going on. It's been for the last 4 years between the data crew and the sort of purist A&R crew sort of thing. And I think it's starting to, like it's done this and the purists are there and we're doing this at the moment and it's going to go the other way at some point, but we're still in the sort of comeback of that. And I think part of that is because of, I mean, we can speak about sort of IPOs and all that sort of stuff, but part of that is because of the pressures that the majors are having on results and immediate results and everybody being afraid of getting it wrong and being the person that is sort of responsible for people not hitting their numbers each year.
Right.
Which is a scary place to be because these major companies, they pay well and they offer you good security. So nobody wants to lose their job. Yeah. But ultimately, the creative world is unpredictable and it's a place where you're not guaranteed anything ever when you're taking a risk on an artist, on a record sort of thing. So a lot of people have reverted into sort of the safety of data and being able to forecast against a set number or a set thing that they can see through the back end of a computer. Yeah,
and because when you mention IPO, the reality is it's like IPO stands for initial public offering because you're going to go into market, right? It's now a public company. So these major labels are all public companies. And I think UMG became a public company in 2020 or 2021.
Yeah, I think around that sort of time, but I think they're going to go again soon.
In the US, right? Because they did that one in Europe, I believe.
I think, it's in Europe.
Yeah, so what ends up happening in that, prior to that, it's much more creative, you would say.
Yeah.
Right? But once you have an IPO and now you are beholden to the public.
It's a different thing. I think it's a different energy. I think there's nowhere to sort of, there's not enough room to get it wrong.
Right.
And I think that's the challenge. Before there'd be a bit of room to get it wrong, you'd be able to find yourself, you can fall over a few times, you get up, brush yourself off and figure it out if you had a boss that really just backed it sort of thing. And I think now it's really hard to allow someone to get it wrong for more than a year and a half.
Can you drill down on why that is?
I think because there's a lot of pressure on delivering numbers. And I think, and I sort of, I hark back to the IPO thing, and this might annoy some people, but I think because of the IPO thing, the way those things work.
Podcast is for us to annoy people. This podcast annoys some people sometimes.
You know what? Shit happens, innit? So,
sorry.
No, but I think whenever there's stuff like IPO talk in the background, I think there's the way they get these deals done is they promise numbers. They forecast against what the company is probably going to do.
Yeah.
And when that starts to wobble in any way, or any of that sort of doesn't start to hit what they've sort of promised to shareholders or people, they start to readjust the structure of the companies to sort of suit it, which is where the sort of the EBITDA thing comes in.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, the squeeze on sort of the creatives who are not conventional people, they're not in at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They're not always sort of can give you a full plan of what's going to happen over the next 3 months on their artists. What they can do is they've got great taste. They know the characters and they can identify characters that can make a real difference on projects and able to navigate that. But it's really hard to put that on paper and to measure that against if you're a head of finance at a big label who's deciding on who's staying and who's going and who's adding value and who isn't, sort of thing. So I think because of that, I think we've seen a decline in super forward-thinking creatives in lead roles at bigger companies. In my opinion. But I do think that's changing. I think if you look at like Imran and Justin over at Island Records and the change they've made over there in terms of sticking to their taste and developing artists that have really broken commercially globally, but have really dug in on this sort of record making side of it and positioning of it. I think they've done such a good job of managing the aesthetic of what the label is over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think because of their success at Columbia before that, they were able to get that. But where I think there's a gap is sort of the next wave of kids who are going to be those characters and giving them enough room to get it wrong a bit along the way.
Do you think it's possible still to get it wrong at the major label system?
I think people do it every day anyway, but I think the visibility on it is different because of how we sort of measure success. To be honest, I think at majors, I think sort of because of the role the finance guys have in sort of judging who's staying and who's going sort of thing, I think that can be a really tricky place to be.
Yeah, for sure. Because like the reality is, like you said, if the thing isn't going in the right direction, then all of a sudden marketing budgets start to get slashed. All of a sudden people start to get let go as well, right? Because
we've seen it. You got all your budget.
You have to be profitable.
You have to be profitable. I've had situations where we're on single 2. We've got a budget for 5 singles. We're on single 2. Single 1 is grossly underperformed on what we sort of hoped it would do. And so the budgets get trimmed back.
Yeah.
So the finance guys are like, oh, well, we were going to give you 20 grand on this, but the last single hasn't done that, so the next one probably won't too. So let me give you half of that money and then come back to me if it starts to move. And you're like, hold on a second, this is the start of a process. So it's going to take a bit, but that boils back to the initial deal as well, and how an A&R person articulates what it's going to take for this deal to work, sort of thing, which a lot of A&Rs don't have experience in. And I think that's what I've tried to do with my A&Rs is sort of try and be realistic with the finance person, as realistic as you can when something's competitive, about at what point you feel the tide will change and the records are going to start working.
It's crazy because now we know in this market is that you got to let things have time. You got to like make sure that there's a catalog that is building and then
we're finding out the hard way. We're finding out because there's been a load of money pumped into things that have been super like white hot and has not worked on the second song. And we forecast against the win. So it works both ways. Because you have a big win and they'll forecast against it. They'll go, okay, we've had one win. Even if we do 40% of that on the second one and 40% on the third, then we'll make our money back. It's great. And then you get to the second song and it falls off a cliff because there's been no actual groundwork done on the artist. There's no actual sort of substance within it. And then the artist gets dropped and then the labels have the reputation of getting rid of artists.